Hello, my name is Samaria Rooks. I am the Chief People and Inclusion Officer here at Women Who Code. And today I have with me.
I'm Lise Robinson. I'm the Chief Financial Officer at Women Who Code. And we're celebrating Women Code turns 10 and Black History Month.
Yeah, so we're just going to jump right in. I have been with Women Who Code since 2020. I started right at the top of the pandemic. Literally, my interview was with Joey and Elena right the week that they sent out, like, everything's going to shut down. So I interviewed with them. I actually was bike riding, pulled over and chatted with them. And after I left that conversation, I was really motivated about, being a part of this mission. To be honest and being frank, I had never heard of Women Who Code before that day when she first reached out. And I was like, oh my God. So I was frantically looking at the website, trying to learn as much as I could. But the crazy thing is all my friends knew about Women Who Code. And so they actually helped me. And it just made me want to be a part of this mission so much more after leaving that conversation. And I was just so excited. I literally went to write my thank you note and Elena was sending me an offer letter. So it was, for me, it was destiny. I have a more intense story about like kind of how everything happened, but I just knew it was like purposeful for me to be here. So what about you, Lise? What made you interested in Women Who Code?
Well, similar to you, Samaria, I had heard about Women Who Code, but didn't know as much about Women Who Code as my friends who had known about Women Who Code. And so I did a quick research, actually, when you reached out to me to let me know about the opportunity. And when I researched Women Who Code, and I saw that the organization is a civil social organization. So it's not just a technology-based organization, but it's an organization that provides an avenue, a pathway for women who want to be in technology-related careers, for them to get into those careers. And so I thought, with what I've always loved doing, which is working in nonprofit organizations, this fell in line with what I really love, which is working with mission-driven organizations. And my ability to bring strategic, high-level perspective to Women Who Code's finances, accounting needs, building the capacity to manage its finances as the organization continues to grow in size and in complexity, helps its members in an indirect way. And so I feel like my role is very purposeful for the organization.
I totally agree. And I was so excited that you were interested when I reached out. So quick tidbit, I definitely reached out to Lise on LinkedIn. I was like, are you interested in possibly working with us? Because your background is perfect.
Yes. I was so excited that you connected me with Elena and we hit it off right away. And I love that I didn't have to go through an 8-stage interview process, and that, you pursued me, Elena pursued me, and here I am. I'm just loving this work that we do.
I'm glad you're here. So tell me, before Women Who Code, what did your career journey look like?
My career started specifically in nonprofit. So I'm just going to start in 2002. In 2002 is when I started nonprofit work. I started with a nonprofit in Florida that was focused on human services and social justice for youth who were adjudicated in the system. And I realized immediately that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to work for organizations that were mission-driven, that were changing the lives of underrepresented communities. And so in 2002, I spent 8 years after that working with nonprofit organizations, specifically doing this type of work: financial management, accounting, operations, business management. And I realized that at some point, maybe 10 years into the work that I was doing, that I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm doing. And I considered myself a subject matter expert in the field of nonprofit management and financial management. And as we headed into a recession, right, in 2007, I started to plan and prepare myself for what could be the worst. And I started my own firm, my own consulting firm, my own accounting practice on the side, so that I can set myself up to be a chief financial officer or COO one day. And so for the next 10 years, from 2010 up until right now, I have spent those 10 years in making sure that I develop others who are new to accounting or new to financial management, that they can learn what I've learned. So capacity development, it has always been really important to me the last 10 years of my career, in that it's not enough to just know and to be good at what I do, but it's also important to impart and share what I know with others who want to be where I am, or who would want to be in the path that I've taken myself into. So I can say that for the last 20 years, this is all I've been doing. I literally have been doing financial management with organizations. I don't know anything else. And, I've tried to, on the side, sell Mary Kay and do other things that might be a little exciting for others to do on the side, but I stick to what I know. What about you, Samaria? What has your journey been like?
My journey has been very interesting. So, just kind of starting off, I started in the retail space, getting out of college, being fresh out of school, not knowing exactly what I wanted to do, because I graduated, my undergrad degree was with a therapeutic recreation and community health. So I am completely left for my undergrad. I really wanted to be in the health field because I knew I wanted to help people. But once I did my internship, I realized that it was not for me. Like, that space just was not for me. I needed something a little bit more where I could still help people, but I needed to be more on the corporate side. Mm-hmm. So I went into retail just for a bridge gap, and I ended up staying in retail for 3 years. It was the longest 3 years of my life, but it helped me to realize exactly where I wanted to be. At the last year that I was in the actual stores, I realized that I wanted to move into HR. I met the HR director at the store. She came down from corporate. She was in Columbus, and she came down to visit me, and she was just like, okay, what are your drivers? What do you want to do? And I'm like, actually, I want to do what you're doing. So I was like, I need to transition. So I quickly moved. They heard me loud and clear. And that was a true blessing for me. It was just kind of like, they heard me and they moved me in that career path. I went into recruiting. That's how I broke into HR. And from there, I just started to elevate it. I went in, got my master's, my MBA, and then a concentration in human resources. And I just continued my career. I was very strategic. I moved into corporate HR through retail, but at the Home Depot. So it was a transition from clothing retail into like retail at corporate. And I just kind of moved my way through the pathway there. And ultimately, it landed me in a role where I could finally figure out all the ins and outs of HR. To be honest, my first HR business partner role, I had no idea what I was doing, but I learned. I was very strategic in making connections and getting into different types of clubs and learning about HR. And from there, I became good at what I did. I really learned my craft. I perfected it. And I know ultimately I wanted to help people. So what better way to help people than to be in human resources, which funds people's lives, impacts their lives daily. Getting someone a new job or starting at a new company, it really impacts someone's lives. It impacts their trajectory and what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. So I felt like it was the perfect blend for me. And currently I'm back in school trying to further my education in employment law and human resources risk management, getting a law degree, trying to round out that whole piece. Everyone says I would make a good lawyer. I don't think so as much, but I maybe later in my life, I might go back to law school at some point. I have a couple lawyers in my family, and it interests me, especially now being in my program, but it's not at the top of my list. I love HR, and that's where, like you said, that's what I'm good at. That's what I know, and I'm going to stick to that piece of it.
Agree.
Okay, Lise, so tell me, what has it meant to be a Black woman in leadership, especially in the C-suite level?
Oh my goodness. So when I think about being a Black woman in a leadership position, I think back 2013, had my MBA, had many years of experience doing this, and I was in an all-white space, right? And I was the only Black person in the organization that I worked for, and there were 50 employees. I was the only Black person who in front of the board members was present to do a presentation of the budget or the financial statements. And I remember not feeling like I was taken serious. I remember feeling like their responses and the way that they looked at me as if, regardless of the number of years that I had in experience and all the hard work that I had put in becoming who I was in my career, I wasn't taken serious because of what I looked like. And I do recognize at the time I was, early 30 years old or whatever. So I was young also. So it might have been my age, it might have been my sex, it might have been the color of my skin. But I realized quickly that failure was not an option for me. And I had to find a way to have a voice in the work that I was doing, to make sure that when I was presenting in front of the board and I was in all white spaces and I was at round tables within the community of other financial directors and financial experts, that I represented Black women in a positive way, and that I presented myself as someone who was confident in what I knew. So for me, being a Black woman in a leadership position, it means that as an underrepresented person in a leadership role in financial management, I had not seen any Black women as CFOs. I started my own firm in 2010, and I gave myself the title of principal and chief financial officer, outsourced chief financial officer. And I made sure that when I presented myself to potential clients, that I said to them, I know what I'm talking about. I'd love to work with you. I'd love to have you as a client, because what I experienced was that I wasn't taken serious, and that it seemed that my youth and my skin color and my sex were a hindrance to being taken serious. And so it has not been easy, but I've always pushed forward in making sure that as a young Black professional in financial management and at the C-suite level, that I represent other Black women who desire to be in this same role, that they're taken serious, and that I represent someone who is confident in what I know and what I'm capable of. And share your experience with me, Samaria. Has it been as challenging for you being in a C-suite level, or has it been easy for you?
So to be honest, I think I'm a little bit earlier in my career, and I will admit that I've had a little bit of privilege on the side of using my Greek organization. I am a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, plug there, but using my Greek organization and using my connections to get into places that honestly I probably would not have been in without that affiliation. I have not really had trouble getting into certain rooms, but I will say some people are like, do you belong there? Are you supposed to be here? When I tell people that I'm Chief People and Inclusion Officer at Women Who Code, they're taken aback. And it always reminds me that I am qualified. I am able to be in those rooms, and I am supposed to be there. So my journey, while I will say that I have been able to move fairly quickly in my career and move into rooms that is not quite expected or defying the odds, what some would say, I will say that I didn't see many people who looked like me in these roles. And like at the big companies, I've worked with all of the big companies in Atlanta, including the Cokes, Bank of America, State Farm. I worked with all of them as my clients through Randstad, and helping them to, outsource some of their HR functions. So it was it was different to see. That's where I wanted to be, but I didn't see many people there. in those positions. So having the conversation with Elena and Joey when we were talking about transitioning into that C-suite role, I will say I was terrified. I did not think that I was the person for that job if it were not for Kim Bennett and Joey, just saying that you're qualified. You know the role, you know how to do this. I don't know if I would have even put my best foot forward to move into that role. Like I said, I know HR and I know as you progress in your career, it just becomes more of a strategic mindset, which I've always thought in that way. But it was more of the imposter syndrome because I hadn't seen people that look like me in these spaces. So for me, it was more of getting out of my own way and taking that step into a space that I hadn't seen me. My aunt is a HR professional. She has done well in her career. She was more so in the military side. And I know I always had her to kind of look at, but I was not interested in anything military. So that was just not the route I wanted to go. So it was a very interesting transition for me. But I will say, I'm thankful for where I am now. And, I walk into any board meeting, any room, any meeting, like I do belong there. And like I am the Chief People and Inclusion Officer. So for you, what was your intentionality around C-suite getting into that role? I know you mentioned that you wanted to give yourself that title and move into those spaces and say you were qualified, but was there anything else around that space that you really were intentional about to make sure that you were in a C-suite role for other companies?
It really was that, and in 2010, when I saw that the housing market crash, I started Ulysses Asset Management thinking I would get away from nonprofit organizations and go into the field of financial management from the sense of being a stockbroker. I thought I was going to be a stockbroker, and then the market crashed. And so I went through getting the CFA Certified Financial Advisor license, and I started tinkering with the market, the stock market, and I realized that there was no coming back right away. And if I needed to make money, I needed to get back into what I know, which was nonprofit work. But I still established and maintained Ulysses Asset Management as a consultancy and an outsourced CFO role for organizations that really didn't want to have someone full-time working for them, but needed someone that they can partner up with, like being a thought partner to organizations and presidents and CEOs. And so I started off at using that route, and then started applying for positions that were director roles, like director of finance and operations. And most of the organizations that I worked with at the time did not have a CFO. They didn't have a C-suite. It was more of executive director, and that was it. And so, in that sense, the director role was the CFO role, right? I had no one else. I've never had another finance or accounting person that I reported to. I've always worked directly with executive directors and presidents. So I had always been in that role as being a strategic partner and thought partner to the leaders of the organization. But in the sense of being an employee, I had not held the title of Chief Financial Officer. I played the role of Chief Financial Officer, but didn't have the title. And so I was really intentional about making sure that at some point or another, that title was the ultimate title in my field that I would maintain. And when I think about the future, I've thought, well, maybe a chief officer position might be what I want to do, as I continue to grow and understand finance. But not all organizations see a need for a COO. And so since this is something that I can do with my eyes closed, if you will, being a person that is focused on capacity development is really important for my next move, that those who work with me, that I find ways to develop them so that they can grow in their own work and so that they can be promoted. And if, you know, if it isn't about someone who reports directly to me, I can also develop my team members, my colleagues, and in knowing how to manage the finances of their own areas and their programs. And so, yeah, it's been intentional, but I continue to grow laterally. I continue to grow in where I am by educating others and by teaching others how to be as good in financially managing their own areas.
Awesome. Would you say, I know you kind of touched on this earlier, but the adversity piece, did you feel like you had any adversity kind of moving into that space?
No, I don't think it's been a matter of adversity. The challenges has always been, like I said earlier, my age. I hate to be honest about it, but it's been age, it's been the fact that I'm female. And then the third challenge has been, you know, a Black woman. But putting all of that aside and just kind of using the fact that I have the knowledge and the experience and the education to be a great asset to an organization, I don't think that, you know, that's been too much of a challenge that has been unbearable. I think if anything, it's made me stronger. It's made me more resilient. And yeah, I believe that it's only going to get better from here on out. So, yeah.
Yeah, great. I literally was trying to think of something where I had some adversity, but you know, the one thing I can come up with as an example is when I transitioned from recruiting into being an HR business partner, I will never forget the woman who was training me, and she was a white woman who had been in the business for 40 plus years. Like she literally did her due diligence. She was smart as a whip. You know, she had it to the T. And for the organization, she had been with them for 20 years at the time. But she literally called me on the phone. She was like, I just don't really understand how this is going to work. You don't have the experience. And I was so taken aback. Like I didn't even know what to say back to her. I just literally said, she's like, but she's like, I know you're smart. So if we just put in the work, we can figure it out. But I was just shocked that she actually said that to me. Like, and it was just kind of like, I think she almost said it too before she realized that she was, okay, you're talking to me. And I remember hanging up the phone and I was like, I need to call my mom. And I called my mom like bawling. I was like, Mom, what? Like, I cannot believe she just said this to me. Like, obviously they promoted me for a reason. They felt like I could do the job. And my mom just spit that right back to me. She said, you can do it. Don't let anyone tell you differently. And from that moment, you know, I literally just changed my whole tune. I was like, I belong here. And the team, I was the youngest on the team. I was the only Black woman on that team. And it was a team of about 10 HR business partners, youngest, only Black woman. And they literally treated me that way in the beginning until they realized that, okay, Samaria is smart. She has built a relationship with her, you know, the divisions that she's supporting. And it really helped me set up, like, you know, after that, if I realized I could overcome this, I can overcome anything. So that would be the one example where I was just taken aback that she actually said that to me. And I just couldn't believe, with everything kind of going on in the world. And although it wasn't as bad as 2020, but back then when it was going, I'm still like, you know, we're making space for Black women, and you have the nerve to tell me that you don't see how this is going to work. Basically, you were telling me you don't understand how I got this promotion. Yeah. But anyways, I'm here. So from a DEI space, what do you feel like it means to be a Black woman in the C-suite?
Like I said earlier, I don't know about others. Yeah, I don't know about being male. I don't know about being someone, you know, of a different gender, of a different race. But for a Black woman, it means that failure is not an option. And we're literally under a microscope. And so our integrity is important. Our integrity in the work that we do is important, because there are others that will follow in our footsteps. And so we have to have integrity about the work that we produce. In my sense, as for me, it's financial management. So I have to continue to learn what best practices are out there. I do a lot of professional development. One, for the license that I have, all the licenses require continuing education, but I have to stay on top of my game in the field that I'm in. And so, those old tricks that I learned in the past are not good enough. So I have to connect with others. I'm part of National Black MBA Association. So I surround myself with others who hold an MBA in financial management. I surround myself with other women who are doing extraordinary work in organizations, whether it be nonprofit or for-profit. I think that it's important that we continue to grow as Black women in leadership roles, that we don't just sit and be comfortable in just arriving, if you will, but find ways to continue to grow and also mentor others. Whatever you've been through and you've succeeded in the work that you've done, find others that you can mentor and share with them all the good and the bad, not keep them in the dark, but share with them, these are, this is the route that I took, and, and I'd love to share with you how to get to where I am. So I think that that's important. Who about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think piggybacking first off of the mentorship, I think that it is so important for me to give back in the sense of the generations that are coming up, but also my peers, because if I'm being honest, I have a few friends that are in the HR space, but they are where I am per se in my career, and helping them. Like I have been helping my friends, negotiate offers, just things of that nature, like telling them exactly what they should be looking for, and explaining to them, how to transition from a generalist to an HR business partner, how to switch within the HR field, because a lot of people don't realize that HR has so many different functions. It's a minimum of 7 functions. It's just who you ask how many functions we have. But some people transitioning from the benefits space to recruiting, from recruiting to being in the generalist space, it's different. So my idea of giving back is really starting within my natural circle and my natural family, and really helping them, and then branching out into outside of my immediate circle and giving back, speaking at events. And I really have a passion for the children. So definitely not only my nieces and nephews, but outside of them, going and teaching them about, because most people just fall into HR. We don't start into HR. A lot of people do not go to school for HR. You later typically, graduate programs and things of that nature, but it's not as common for people to go into, business and major in HR and undergrad. It's just not as common. So I just teaching people about our space and how we can continue to groom those is very key. And just thinking of it as a Black woman, I just want to echo the piece of you saying that we have to be, very intentional. We have to have plenty of integrity and just show up to work. I feel like 10 steps ahead of anyone. I don't get to show up and just be regular Samaria that I show up with my friends. And I hate to say it that way, but it's like, I really do have to be on my game and know what I'm talking about, continue my education. As you can see, I'm in school now, and I have a foundation of education in our family. Like my dad preached it over and over again before he passed. It was just kind of like, no one can take your education away from you. So that's just something that I hold true to myself, in the sense of continuing education. But my certifications, um, I am in an elite group of having a HR certification within our field, because a lot of people do not hold our certifications, and they're not required, but it does tend to set you apart. And as you continue to move up the ladder, it is something that, you invest in to set you apart from the rest of the people out there. So as you said, just being 2 steps ahead is something, as a Black woman in any space, no matter the field, science, whatever, you do have to continue to be on your game. And we should expect that of all people. You want people to be ahead of the curve, punch above their weight. But I feel like being a Black woman, it's expected for us to do everything, and not only just be on top of the world in our careers, but also in our personal lives. Like, we need to be ahead, take care of the home as well as take care of, the dinner table, whatever it is. But as Black women, we tend to take all of that on and forget that, we have to put ourselves first, essentially, in that entire space. But I could go on and on about that. But being a Black woman in the corporate nonprofit space and for profit is just making sure that I am on my P's and Q's, in layman's terms. So,
Yep.
So if we had to leave our listeners with a pro tip, what would be your pro tip in reference to being in the C-suite and elevating your career?
The tip that I would leave with the listeners is be intentional about your career path. Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? And, if you're like me and you're in the financial space, and, maybe you're a senior accountant and there's a CFO that is, who you report to, let your CFO know, hey, teach me how to take your job. Teach me how to do your job. And, and if it's a manager that cares about capacity development, they will show you how to get there. They will put you on that path. And no one who is an intentional manager should feel threatened by, a supervisee saying, hey, teach me how to get to that stage. That is something that I've always been intentional about when it comes to those who report to me, that I find out what it is that they want to do and help them get there, even if it might take, 3, 4, 5 years. And so be intentional about what your career path looks like and plan it out. If you want to one day be a CFO, the first stage is junior accountant, then, senior accountant, controller, and then eventually you'll get there. But be intentional, map it out, find out what the education requirements are around getting to that role. Find out the networks that you need to join so that you find where job openings are. Talk to your managers about professional development opportunities, but be intentional about where you want to go.
I love that. Intentional was my word a couple years ago, and I feel like that is it. Like, you have to be intentional about everything that you do, and I echo that. And if I had to give a pro tip, I think I'm going to steal something that you said previously, and it's surrounding yourselves with people who can affirm you and, that motivate you to do better. I could not live this life without my girlfriends in my group chat. I think that is like my lifeline. Honestly, they are my best friends from college. And then I have another group chat, post friends from college, after college. So my group, my network, are everything to me. And I have people not only in my family, but outside of my family, my chosen family, that really affirm me and help me, celebrate my wins. I had friends who celebrated when I was promoted into the C-suite. They threw me a dinner. We had a great time. It was amazing. Like, we were able to fellowship, and it was nothing but Black women in the room. And it was one of the most amazing times of my life. So I genuinely say the people around you mean everything. So surround yourself with the people that you can learn from, as well as grow with, and celebrate with, and cry with, all of that. So I think you're Your surroundings are 110% important. So, yeah. Make sure that you subscribe to our podcast and check out our YouTube channel for more Black History Month content and technical and career related videos. We hope that you enjoyed talking with us today. Anything that you would like to add, Lise?
I really hope that the information that we shared with everyone was beneficial, and it really helps all the listeners to really be intentional about their career path.